Let's talk about Bangladesh, Tigerland. Oh, they're from Tigerland.
Blimey.
In any weather, you'll see them with a grin, resting head and shin. They knocked off Bangladesh in a test match. You will have heard about this, but we were watching this avidly. So it had the streaming going on in the radio box while also doing the test that we were doing, watching the other tests. Everybody was found this very gripping. Those who are interested in cricket, they've never beaten New Zealand in any format ever. To do it over the course of 5 days. I mean, to do it over the course of a full test match, it's harder and harder. Like underdog upsets, the shorter the game, the more likely, the more possible they are. And over a test match, they become basically impossible because the quality of a better team will tell, and the quality of a team in its home conditions will tell. But look, they went into this series. New Zealand cricket, good on them. They play Bangladesh more often than anyone. They host them on a regular basis. They had Ross Taylor announcing his retirement after this series. Big emotive thing for a long-serving player in the game. And New Zealand, they look great. They rack up 328 in the first innings. Devon Conway makes another 100 because he's just on fire at the moment. Henry Nicholls 75, Will Young 52, and you think that should be it for Bangladesh. If they're facing a team that makes 300 plus in the first innings in foreign conditions like that, they should fold. But the most important part of the match, to that point, was their whole top 8 made double figures.
Yeah.
They were all consistent. Couple of 80s, 70, a 60, a 50, and they put together a massive innings. They've done this once before in New Zealand, made 500 plus back in 2019, maybe it was, and they still ended up losing by a mile. New Zealand
Shakib made a double ton and they still lost.
Yeah, exactly that. But in this case, they ended up 458 all out, so they got a lead of 130 and then hammered it home.
Yeah, Mominul Huq being the new leader and having taken over the armband from Mushfiqur, who's been a superb captain of that team, especially at white ball level. They have dropped off. It's impossible to avoid the modern history of Bangladesh cricket has been pretty grotty over the last couple of years, with the exception of that T20 win over Australia. They've not been going well, but it's that next group of players coming through. So a new captain, Lytton Das, who made runs in that middle order. He made 100 in the second test, which we'll come to in a sec. But Ebadot Hossain, crazy story really, man of the match, 6 wickets in the second dig, but effectively comes out of a reality TV show. He was playing volleyball in the military, in the Air Force, I think it was, and they did a nationwide talent search for fast bowlers, effectively a reality TV show, where he ends up getting fast-tracked through the first-class system, through the BPL, into Test cricket. He'd played about a dozen tests before this, but this was the first time that it had really paid off. And you're right, it was that grind, the fact that they were willing to do it over about 130 overs, I think it was, to build a first innings lead, which ended up being the pressure they required to put New Zealand under the pump the second time around when Ebadot kicked off.
But even then, so even the second time around, right? So the first innings deficit is 130. New Zealand are 136 for 2. So they're into the lead and they've got 8 wickets in hand. And at that point, you fully expect New Zealand will get 200 in front, and that's all they'll need, and they'll bowl out Bangladesh, and that will happen. And that's when Ebadot Hossain comes in. He's not quick. He's sort of right arm mediums, really. He played 10 tests in which he'd taken 11 wickets at an average of 81 before this spell.
Okay.
That's
Rubel Hossain numbers.
Yeah. He got Conway out early in that second innings, so that had happened. He was on the board. And then he has this sequence where he starts getting the ball to reverse, and he bowls Will Young, bowls Henry Nicholls, Tom Blundell leg before. Then the next morning, bowls Ross Taylor and has Jamison caught. So at one point he's got a spell of 3 for none, and then a bit later on he's got 5 for 7 in that spell, and he's just ripped the heart out of them. They get bowled out for 160 odd.
Yep.
And Bangladesh chase 42 to win.
And Mushfiqur hits the winning runs. It's a beautiful thing, really. There's so much to take from this. One bit is that the previous Test match they were scheduled to play in New Zealand was in February 2019, and it didn't go ahead because of the massacre in the mosque in Christchurch. I can't remember the name of the mosque, but true human tragedy, which the Bangladesh team were within moments of being caught up in themselves, going to mosque themselves on that particular day. So, that's the recent history of them being in New Zealand. Even the way that Ebadot spoke about, they made a pact with each other that they were going to fight like they'd never fought before in a test match. Like they felt like they had a point to prove because they have been rubbish. You know, as recently as the T20 World Cup in November, they looked as uncompetitive as they ever have in a global tournament, going back to '99 when they famously beat Pakistan and became a full member shortly thereafter. Yeah. But just their 6th win away from home, which actually is. Which isn't as bad as what it sounds when you consider they've only played 60 test matches all time away from home. And Australia and England are part of this problem. Australia haven't hosted them since 2003, as we've talked about many times. The most recent instance of where they were meant to come and didn't was 2018, when CA didn't even bother to put a press release out. And they won't play in Australia until at least 2023, when the new FTP kicks in 2024. England last hosted them in 2010. And I know I'm banging away and repeating myself, but the great thing about this was that it started that conversation again. Nick Hockley was asked about it, the chief executive of CA, about Australia's responsibility with Bangladesh. And to his great credit, he put his hand up and said, you're right. Like, they do need to do a better job with countries who are finding their way at test level. And he spoke about Bangladesh specifically and referred to the next FTP. Like, I reckon Hockley, having had a bad start with what happened in South Africa last year, I reckon he was, and I've written this in the next edition of Wisdom Cricket Monthly, I reckon he had a bad start with South Africa. I reckon he was quite bruised by that whole thing because his personal integrity was called into question. He's a very proud man and he likes to deliver on his commitments. Thus why he doesn't like changing the schedule. He likes to go through the domestic summer the way that it's set up. That was the case last year with India. He was headstrong. You speak to anyone at CA and they say, if not for his personal leadership, that India series would have gone to shit last year. And even though I disagree with the position of playing the first test at Brisbane and through it goes, he apparently was determined to make the schedule play out the way it was announced. So with that in mind, I reckon now that he's personally going to go to Pakistan, he's committed to the Pakistan trip. He knows that Australia need to go there. He wants them to be better global citizens. He wants the Bangladesh question to be resolved in the medium term through the FTP. And yeah, my respect for Hockley has grown in the last week when he's been talking about this, and learning that he will be there in Pakistan with us. I reckon, credit to him for sort of realising that this way of Australian cricket, in theory, supporting these lesser countries so long as they didn't have to play them, that he will be a corrective on that thinking, I reckon, over time.
Okay. Well, I hope that's the case, and I hope the next FTP reflects that. I suppose getting Afghanistan notionally in before it got cancelled reflected that, but that was one of the few cancellations where it wasn't Cricket Australia just trying to save themselves some effort. They wanted to play that test because they had money on the line. But yeah, even what was floating about the possibility of playing a test against Ireland, those sort of things might happen. I guess Bangladesh were hungover in the second test, or New Zealand were pissed off because they came back hard, made 521, Latham 252. I think that's Kane Williamson's best as well, isn't it? The 252.
No, but the 252 is on that list of scores that's never been made.
Oh, right.
So when we haven't hit the holy ground of 229 yet, but 252 is about the 5th highest score. Sorry, I'll rephrase that. The 5th lowest score yet to be made. So Kane might have been 253, I reckon.
I think.
Yeah, but so Latham gets there. Was it Latham who was given out twice in an over?
No, it was Will Young.
Will Young and after Bangladesh, not unreasonably at Hockley, looking at a green top. We've been to Hockley before. I mean, I can't wait to get back to Hockley Oval. Those pictures were beautiful over the 3 days they played. But if you see a green top there, you could be excused for bowling first, having taken 20 wickets the previous
How many times
week.
do we have to warn people? Green pitches in New Zealand
don't mean anything.
They're not green.
No,
they don't play green.
They're fraudulently green.
They look green.
Yeah, but you can see why they did it, having taken 20 wickets and try and put New Zealand under pressure again.
They're not
but
a green
backfired.
mamba. They're a green mamba painted on a concrete surface. Don't get sucked in. But look, it was Will Young who was given out twice and had it overturned twice, and then edged the one to slip that got dropped, and then had the overthrows, and so he got 7 runs from being dropped at slip.
And how about Ebadot having to chase down? I keep saying his name, having to chase down the 4 overthrows as well. It was he who had to slide in. You got to feel for the guy. He also committed to the cause.
He also had overthrows that conceded a 5 in that innings, so he's the first bowler ever to concede a 5 and a 7. None of which was his fault.
Andrew Sampson dug that one out about 24 hours later. Bless him.
There haven't been a lot of 7s. There have been 6 7s in the history of Test cricket.
There have been 4 8s.
There we go. 4
Are you familiar with any of them?
No, don't think so.
How you do it is by running 4 and then having 4 overthrows.
Right.
Andrew Simons at the Gabba in 2008, and it was Ian O'Brien who was bowling at the time, a friend of the pod. There was...
I thought that was down as one of the 7s. I thought they ran 4 and should have been given 8, but they were only given 7.
It was 8. According to Cricinfo, it's an 8.
Okay.
There's an 8 where Brian Lara had the helmet hit behind the keeper via Mark Boucher, so it was 3 plus 5. Yeah. These days that would go down as penalty runs. Then it went to the batter. Right. There was one, Patsy Hedren was involved in one at 28-29 at Melbourne.
Yeah.
And there's one
Probably
other.
Just because the ground was so big that they had time to run 8.
Oh, and Rod Marsh was the other one who an errant throw from him, which created 4 overthrows. I can't remember who the batter was, but I think it was a New Zealander in 1981. I looked it up during the week just to clarify. So if you're curious about these matters, there you go.
And there's the famous 9 from Murum Gunaram on the 1868 tour,
yes.
Where it wasn't an overthrow situation. It was just that there was a posh bloke fielding at mid-off who refused to chase the ball, and they had an argument about whether he should chase it or not, and they just kept running. And so by the time he finally went and got it, they'd run 9.
Have you noticed that whenever these like unusual instances come up with 7s or 8s, you always get tweeted into your feed that apocryphal tale about Victoria and New South Wales and the 266 off one ball when the ball gets caught up a tree. Yeah. Stop tweeting that. That
didn't happen.
Is bullshit. Yeah. You don't need to keep tweeting that out there. Yeah. I know it comes up on Google, but it's been debunked many, many times.
I've had to get a bow and arrow to shoot it out of the tree. Anyway, look, Bangladesh got hammered by an innings and 117 runs. So New Zealand 521 in the first, Taylor made 28, got a guard of honour coming out to the middle. Nice stuff, nice Test cricket things. And then Bangladesh all out 126 and then all out 278 following on. 5-wicket haul for Bolt in the first innings. Lytton Dust made 102 for a bit of fun in the second.
Happy about that. He's a player.
Yeah.
He's a proper player, Lytton Dust. And how about Roscoe taking a wicket, his 3rd Test wicket, with his final ball in Test cricket, much to the enjoyment of the Christchurch crowd. They chuck him the ball when it's 9 down, and Ebadot, who had a sequence of
10 innings of naught or naught not out.
There you go. Yeah, we had that sent to us during the week. He got to 4 and then hit a ball that was 2 feet outside the off stump from around the wicket, straight in the air, taken by Tom Latham, appropriately enough, after making his 252. Latham became the first player to make a 250 and take 5 catches in an innings, I think it was.
It was basically Alex Carey's shot from the first innings at Sydney.
Yes.
Sorry, Carey fans, but
no,
it was.
Well, you're going to get in trouble for saying that.
Yeah, I know.
You can't criticise Alex Carey.
No.
We've both found that out in recent days.
No.
But yes,
my favourite thing is people who accuse you of state bias. I'm like, I could not give less of a shit about being Victorian.
Yeah,
it means nothing.
I copped this in the YouTube comments the other day, saying that I'm one of the pundits who are pushing for Marcus Harris's retention because I'm Victorian. I'm like, he's from fucking Perth, and I don't care. And I don't care.
And he's not very good.
And I've said like 50 times that Karachi's what matters. Hobart, whatever. Like, sure. If Harris plays, sure. Khawaja plays, Head plays, 2 of them are going to play.
Frankly, and George Bailey could open in Hobart. It's a farewell.
One of them isn't going to play. And look, it feels as though Khawaja's going to play regardless, and Harris will be left out. But it doesn't really matter because they're playing 9 tests in Asia. Well, that's the real quiz, and Khawaja's clearly opening in all of them. So let's not get too worried, right?
Yeah, can Marcus Harris throw a kettle over a pub? So that was Bangladesh and New Zealand.